And so thank you so much for having me here today. And the title of my talk is the Earthling Initiative, which is a movement that I'm involved with. It's also the name of a podcast that I'm working on and producing that should be ready for release here in the summer. But it's basically based on 3 tenets. And those tenets are all is one, love one another, and celebrate life. I'm a biologist by trade. I've got a degree in biology and I have a degree in forestry, so I'm really into nature and hugging trees and getting dirt on my hands. And the one thing I've been struck with in all those studies is that everything on this planet is connected biologically, right? Not even just living things, but inanimate things as well. We're all made of the same things. When you really look at it, we're all made of cells. And those cells are basically, there's 3 chemicals in those cells, right? There's fats, carbohydrates, and proteins. Right? And when we break those down, those are all made up by molecules, and molecules are made by atoms. And those are the same atoms that make up everything on this planet, everything in the universe. We've basically figured out, you look on the periodic table, all of the atoms, all of the elements that are out there. And as we age and die and decay, all those bits go back into the earth and something new comes out, right? It's the ultimate reincarnation, right? So we're all together, and then it's just a different expression of the same thing. In this world that we live in right now, this time right now, there's a lot of divisiveness. There's a lot of duality. We could talk about all those things that are there that someone disagrees or agrees with. And I call these tenets the great connectors because I feel like if we live by these tenets, we could have a conversation with anybody because we're all earthlings. Take that perspective out, right? It's not about color or preference or perspective. It's just we're all earthlings. And that's what this Earthling Initiative is all about. I like to say, you're different just like me, not you're different than me. Right? And differences can cause a lot of issues. As soon as we start pulling things apart, now it's us versus them, or this is wrong and this is right. And then you've seen that create all kinds of exploitations based on these differences. Right? And if we just pull that perspective back that we're all earthlings, then we all have something in common. Right? And that commonality is how we can change the world. I really believe that. One of the things that I'm struck with in this lifetime is how one of the most difficult things we've ever done in this life, all of us had to deal with it. It's the hardest thing we ever did, was being born. Think about it. Everything that had to come together in order for us to actually be born, our ancestors way down the line had to meet up somehow. And all of their life story and all of their life experience and everything that led to the fact of us being in this room right now were all decisions that we made to get us here right now. And so all of those things that pile up, and just at any given time, something could have changed, right? And not even that, so all of that, and then the biology behind being born too, is almost an impossible thing. And yet we made it, right? And that talks about celebrating life. Right? Differences can cause a lot of problems. And if we realize that we're all one and we're all connected, then the work is about letting go. Letting go of notions or ideas. Letting go of teachings or dogmas. Letting go of control. And just being in that moment. Zen meditation for me is always a great thing because it's one of those, you're sitting and all of a sudden there's things that are going on. Did anybody have any thoughts or things going on in their head while that was happening? It's one of the hardest, it seems like such an easy thing to sit and breathe for a few minutes, and it's probably one of the hardest things that we can do. But the breath is what connects all of us. The breath is what connects us to the universe, right? And all of those things that connect each other is just that deep breathing. It's something that you really don't have to try to do. It's something we always do. It's a conscious breathing that makes a difference, And what comes with that energy, or what comes with that breathing, is an energy, the life force energy. I'm a firm believer in energy and getting energy from things. That's why I hug trees so much, right? Because I know if I'm feeling bad one day and I go out and I hug a silver maple, which has got a lot of give me energy. Does anyone have a silver maple growing on there around them? It's along, and those things they dig up sidewalks, they grow so fast, they're just But if I give that energy to that tree, suddenly I'm feeling better. Right? I realize that I look at a lot of trees in terms of how much energy they take from me, but that's just my experience. One of the things that can help us in terms of being in the moment and letting go are some mantras. I'm going to talk about a couple of those, but especially in terms of connection. So if I look at you, I realize that I'm looking at myself. When I shake your hand or hug you, I'm hugging myself. When I water a plant, I'm nurturing myself. Because we're all one, we're all connected. When I breathe in all of our fears, and I breathe out peace. Right? And that breath is what connects us all. And it's always a way that if we're ever off on something or we're not in that space, we can always take a deep breath and recenter ourselves. In yoga they call it prana, life force, energy. Right? Breath is extremely powerful. So once we know that we're all connected, there's a practice that helps us stay in that space, and it's loving one another. Love is the practice. Right? Love permeates almost every teaching out there. Buddha said that hate does not beget hate. Only love conquers hate. And how much have we seen about these in our lifetime, in the life story of this planet, of how love and nonviolence has changed the world, and not the other way around. One of the most powerful teachings we all know is when Jesus was here, someone asked him, "What's the greatest commandment?" And he gave two. He said, "Love God with all your heart, mind, and soul, and love your neighbor as yourself." As I've been here on this planet, I've noticed that humans are very good at the first one. We love God, so much so that it creates tension. Because my God might be different than your God, but I could take this mock talk and I could set this right here. I could put this down on a thing, and I could give everybody a piece of paper and say, draw this mock talk. And you would. And you'd have all of a picture, and every picture would be different. But it's still the same thing, right? But what about loving our neighbor? That seems to be the harder one for us. And I think that loving our neighbor has got two parts. It starts with loving ourselves. And the other part is loving each other. Love one another. Right? Because when we realize that we're all connected and we're all the same, then it should be relatively easy to love each other. But that's where the work is. Right? The work is always about loving ourselves. And the reason being, we're bombarded right now with messages about how we're unworthy. You smell. Your hair is messy. Right? You got the wrong shoes on. All of this stuff so that we can buy things, so that we can do things. Right? or all trying to convince us that we're not worthy. Just the other day, I was just in a really bad space. I suffer in this wintertime, I suffer from depression at times, just because today's great because the sun's out. But if the sun's not out, it's a little bit rough, and I was just feeling really bad and started writing things down. And all of the stuff that I was writing down was things that were my inner critic picking at me, right? You don't get things done, all this stuff. And I realized as I get through 3/4 of a page of this stuff, I finally got angry. And I'm like, this is not who I am. I'm not this person at all. What I need to do is step out of that and observe what this thought process is. Our inner critic isn't all that bad, right? Because what happens is when we're younger, we might run into some trauma in that, and this inner critic is created. There's two sides of the same coin. You have like a motivational component, and then you have an inner critic on the other side of it, right? And the inner critic part of it is really trying to keep us from the shame of failure, right? And so what happens is if we live in those states like that, we start ending up in just a comfort zone. And when we're in that comfort zone, it's easy. We don't really take any risks. You're never going to fail if you don't try, right? But this life is about being courageous, right? Having the courage to reach out, to love your neighbor, to love one another, right? To be there for each other. Did you know that the word compete is the Latin root means to make better? Right? We used to, the idea of that word is that to compete with someone is to make each other better. Right? It's not domination. All right? The one thing that I would have to say is that I find it intriguing that human beings and interesting feel like we're the overseers of the planet. That seems to be a trend, right? And loving each other and loving other beings, other earthlings, gets us away from that. So what's something that you can say? I love myself the way I am. Mistakes are learning experiences, and I let go of any regrets that may come from those mistakes. When we really start getting good at loving ourselves, it's easy when things are going good. But when things go bad, that's maybe when we find, our inner critic comes in again. Or even just, it's easy to love each other when things are good. But then something else comes into play or something always changes. My life is like, I used to sail a lot. I love sailing. And the one thing I loved about sailing is you just sail to the wind and you get the sail perfect and everything, and you're like, and then the wind changes. And you're like, yeah, this is great. And then the wind changes and you got to let it out. And it's this constant in and out. And I feel like life is a lot like that. It's always changing. Everything is changing, and we want to stay in that comfort zone because that feels good, right? But there's always opportunities to go outside that comfort zone into our growth zone when we push our envelope, when we take a little bit more risk. And sometimes that risk is just reaching out to your neighbor, And there's a practice that I would encourage everyone to do, and I call it smile practice. And it helps us get to that point where we can love one another. And that smile practice works like this. It starts with ourselves. So maybe in the morning when we're looking in the mirror, we just say, hi. I love you. Have a great day today. You look good. That's one I always try and tell myself. You look good, because I don't tend to believe that sometimes. But smile practice, once you feel comfortable with that, then maybe take it out into the world. And so when you're at the grocery store, or you're standing at the corner maybe waiting for someone, or you're at work going to get some water, and you just catch someone's eye, that's an opportunity to smile. Say hello. How are you? Have a great day. You know, it's those little things that make a big difference in life. You wouldn't think it. You know, I've heard this story over and over, and it may be an urban legend. I don't know. But I've heard it, and it's hit me every time I've heard it. And it's a story about a young man who commits suicide. And his family finds a note, and you can imagine they're devastated, you know, and they find this note. And the note is one of despair. And it says, you know, nobody cares in this life. Nobody cares for each other. Nobody cares for me. Everybody's just focused on greed and themselves and that. And he writes in the letter, if I get a smile from someone on my way to the bridge, I won't jump. And he never got that smile. So imagine if you smiled at someone, it could change their life. And I know when someone smiles at me, I'm more likely to smile at you. And over, that smiles, they spread. And before you know it, the whole world's smiling at each other. Wouldn't that be an amazing thing? Just to be surrounded in love? I want to manifest that, is what I want to manifest. And it's easy to smile, right? Smile practice. You know, I mentioned about being born and how difficult that is. You know, and it really talks about the third tenet, celebrate life. What a momentous thing that we are in to have this life here, right now. And there's all types of theories around that. Maybe we're just trying this out from the last life. Maybe we're here to learn something. I don't know, but I know that we're alive right now, and we breathe in. Every time we breathe in, we celebrate that life. You know, it's important. You know, it's something that changes the way in which we look at how we present ourselves and live through this world by celebrating life. So you may know of a contemporary Indian guru, Sadhguru, a lot of people call him. Jagi Vasudev Ji is his actual name. And he has a lot of disciples. He's got a center down in Tennessee, you know, and he travels the world. He was just at Davos, Switzerland for the World Summit, you know, and pretty amazing person. And I know a couple of disciples, and I was struck by a story that one of them told me, and it was after a mass shooting, which is something that is a reality in this world, unfortunately. And this one was really upsetting. I don't remember which one. I don't really want to remember which one. But, and a lot of his disciples came to him and said, you know, this makes us sad. This makes us mad. We're scared. How come you aren't like that? And what he said to them was, how does it serve me to be sad? How does it serve me in the world to be mad, to be scared? And what I feel he meant by that is that we can find ourselves in those states of being and live in that when we're scared, and stay in that, and stay in that anger, and stay in that fear, and stay in that frustration. And pretty soon that becomes our experience. And when we're in that experience, how can we love one another? How can we reach out? How can we be with each other? Right? And his response is celebrate this life. Because when we celebrate this life, we're able to be in that space where we not only can help ourselves, but we can help each other and support each other. Another part of celebrating life is gratitude. You know, I love the holiday Thanksgiving. Right? It's one of my favorite holidays because we're grateful. Right? We talk about, you know, how grateful we are for our family, our health, our jobs, our situations. You know, we really look at all those things to be grateful for. In the Buddhist tradition, gratitude is about being grateful for not only the good things in our life, but all of the tough things too. Because each one of those things creates our lives. Moment by moment. And celebrating life is about this moment. You might have heard the term carpe diem, seize the day. I like to think of carpe momentum, seize this moment. Because this moment is all there is. Their past is a concept, the future is a concept, but this moment right now is what's most valuable. That's why they call it the present. Get it? So, this moment right now. And then it's a collection of moments that make our lives. And so we might have a bad moment, but we don't need to stay in that space. You may have heard the term, I can't control my reaction to something, but I can control my reaction to that reaction. Right? And there might be a bad moment, but I can choose to stay in that moment, in that bad moment, and live that moment and carry that moment with me, or I can choose a different perspective. And that's what Jagi was talking about, is celebrating life, is being in that. And so gratitude, basically, there's 4 components. It fosters 4 things, gratitude. It fosters patience. I remember a time when I was in Detroit and I had to pay a parking ticket. And so I used to live in Detroit. And I don't know if anybody else has, but if you go to the courthouse in Detroit, there's a lot of people and the line is long. And when I get in long lines, I get very anxious because I feel like I don't really know how long it's going to take. 2, there's probably something else I could be doing while I'm standing in this line. And it builds. And so at that moment, I decided I'm going to do walking meditation while I'm in this line. And while I was doing it, I started feeling a lot of gratitude because I got to see the dance that was going on right in front of me. Everybody's, interactions with each other, and it was really this aha, all is one moment for me. And as the more I did it, I just was in that moment, and then the next moment, and then the next moment, the next breath. And every time I took a step, I took a breath. And pretty soon, I'm at the front of the line. And I'm like, okay, I'm here to pay my ticket. And the person looked at the ticket and was like, you're in the wrong line. You gotta go in a different line, right? And so the patience that came over me in that whole thing, though, was really a gift, And so that gratitude helps us stay in that patience, Gratitude is about loving kindness. A lot of people would say that loving kindness and gratitude are interchangeable, and it's a great way of practicing connection. Gratitude combats greed. The more we're grateful for what we have, the less we are greedy about things we don't. And gratitude fosters joy. So I want to close with another practice that you might want to do, and it's gratitude practice. And I was taught that gratitude practice is a good thing to do at the end of the day. Whether you're in bed or you want to just do it and you want to write it down or jot in a journal. And it's basically, the way I do it is in bed, I might be laying there, and I just start thinking about all the things that happened to me that I'm grateful for that day. And how good that feels to have that gratitude. And then breathe it in, just like we breathe in at Zen meditation. Breathe in and feel how good that feels, and let that feeling permeate your whole body. And then think about the things that didn't go well, and feel what that feels like. And there might be, whatever, some, frustration or anger or sadness or whatever that is. But go back to that feeling of joy that you had when things went well. And let that feeling permeate again. Because every moment makes up our lives. And having gratitude for those moments is what makes our lives and creates a new perspective on how we look at things and how we practice our life and how we walk through our life. What if this moment, right now, this breath you took was your last breath? How would you breathe? What if this interaction you had with someone was the last one? What would you say? Gratitude practice brings unending joy. I am so grateful for having me here today. Thank you very much. And hopefully this has been a good talk. So thank you very much.
Can we all stand for the prayer for protection? The light of God surrounds us. The love of God enfolds us. The power of God protects us. The presence of God is within us. Wherever we are, God is, and all is well. Now let's get in the circle for the peace song.